My name is Elizabeth, and for more than 30 years, I was the one who held my family together. I was the one who woke up first every morning. The one who cooked, cleaned, and listened. The one who fixed problems before they became disasters. The one who kept peace when everyone else was ready to fight. And yet, when I finally needed help, they turned on me. But before I explain how they pushed me out, let me take you straight to the moment that shattered my heart. I was standing in the living room, holding a small travel bag. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely close it. My chest felt tight, like the air had been sucked out of the room. My son stood across from me, his arms folded. "You can't stay here anymore," he said. At first, I smiled. A weak smile. "This is my house," I replied softly. "I raised you here." He didn't answer. Then my daughter-in-law spoke, her voice sharp and tired. "You've stayed long enough." That was when it hit me. They were serious. Right there, in the home I helped build, they were kicking me out. If stories like this speak to your heart, please take a moment now. Subscribe to this channel, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss more emotional and powerful stories like this. Also, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know who is here with me. Now let me take you back, so you can understand how everything led to this moment. Years ago, when my husband died, everything started falling apart. He was the loud one. The decision maker. The man everyone depended on. When he was gone, the house felt empty. Bills piled up. Arguments started. Fear settled into every corner. That was when I stepped in. I told my children, "We will survive." I used my savings to pay bills. I sold my jewelry to keep food on the table. I skipped meals so my grandchildren could eat. When my son lost his job, I opened my doors. When my daughter-in-law had a baby, I became the babysitter. When fights broke out, I became the referee. They called me strong. They said, "We don't know what we'd do without you." I believed them. But strength has a price. As time passed, my body started failing me. My knees hurt. My back burned with pain. My hands shook when I cooked. Then one night, I collapsed in the kitchen. I woke up on the floor, surrounded by worried faces. For the first time in my life, I said something I had never said before. "I need help." At first they were kind. "Rest, Mom. We've got you. Don't worry." But kindness can fade. Weeks passed. Then months. My daughter-in-law started complaining. "She's always tired. She doesn't help like before. She's always here." My son stopped talking to me the same way. He avoided my eyes. He stayed silent. One evening, I heard them whispering behind a closed door. "She's becoming a burden," my daughter-in-law said. That word broke something inside me. Burden. After everything I had done. From that day on, I felt invisible. Then came that morning. The day they told me to pack my things. I stood there, holding my bag, waiting for someone to stop it. No one did. My son finally said, "You'll be fine somewhere else." Somewhere else? I looked around the room. The walls I painted. The furniture I bought. The memories I protected. And that's when I understood something painful. They didn't need me anymore. And they were ready to throw me away. As I reached for the door handle, my phone vibrated in my pocket. One message. Just one. My heart started racing. I stopped walking. Slowly turned around. And thought to myself, did they really think I had nothing left? The phone kept vibrating in my hand. I didn't answer it right away. My son and my daughter-in-law were still standing there, watching me, waiting for me to walk out the door like a stranger. The room felt heavy. The air felt thick. My heart was beating so fast I thought they could hear it. "Who is that?" my daughter-in-law asked, her eyes narrowing. I slowly lowered my bag to the floor. "No one," I said quietly. That was a lie. But it was not a lie I was ready to explain yet. Because that message was not just a message. It was a reminder of something they had forgotten. Something I had carried alone for many years. Something that made my hands shake. Not from fear, but from memory. I picked up my bag again and walked out without saying another word. No one stopped me. No one followed me. The door closed behind me with a soft click that sounded louder than any shout. That night, I stayed with an old church friend. Her place was small, but it was warm. She didn't ask too many questions. She only looked at my face and said, "You look tired." I nodded. That was all I could do. When I lay down on the couch, sleep did not come. My mind kept going back in time, replaying everything I had done for my family, and everything they had taken for granted. I remembered the first time I chose them over myself. It was years ago, when my son was still young. I had been offered a small business opportunity. Nothing big, but it would have been mine. A chance to earn something just for myself. But the same week, my son needed money for school. I gave up the opportunity. I can try again later, I told myself. Later never came. Over and over again, I chose my family. When my son got married, I paid for most of the wedding. When they needed a bigger house, I contributed my savings. When they struggled, I stepped in quietly. I never asked for praise. I never asked for repayment. I only asked for respect. And now, here I was, sleeping on someone else's couch. The next morning, I woke up with pain shooting through my back. I sat up slowly and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in my life, I asked myself a hard question. What if I had nothing left to give? I reached for my phone again and read the message I had ignored the night before. It said, "They don't know the truth. And they shouldn't push you." There was no name attached. Just that. My fingers trembled. Because the truth was something my family never wanted to hear. They believed I was weak. They believed I depended on them. They believed I had nowhere else to go. They were wrong. But before I could do anything, something else happened. Later that day, my son called. I stared at the screen for a long time before answering. "Hello," I said. His voice was stiff. Careful. "Mom, we need to talk." I said nothing. "There's been a misunderstanding," he continued. "You got emotional yesterday. We just thought some space would be good." Space. That word hurt almost as much as burden. So being sick makes me emotional? I asked quietly. Silence. Then my daughter-in-law's voice came through the phone. "We can't keep taking care of you," she said. "You're not the same anymore. Not the same. Because I could no longer give everything." "I never asked you to take care of me," I replied. "I only asked for time to heal." Another silence. Then my son spoke again. "We think it's best if you stay away for now." Stay away. From my own home. From my own family. I ended the call without saying goodbye. That afternoon, I went back to the church. Not to pray. To think. I sat on a wooden bench and stared at the floor. That was when memories I had buried deep began to rise. Years ago, long before my husband died, I made a decision. A quiet one. A smart one. I had signed papers. Important papers. Back then, I did it because I was scared of losing everything. Now, I realized those papers still existed. And my family had never asked about them. They assumed everything was already theirs. That night, another message came in. This one was clearer. "If they force your hand, don't protect them anymore." My heart pounded. I wasn't sure if I was ready for what that meant. Because protecting them was all I had ever done. But protection had cost me my health. My peace. My dignity. For the first time, I felt something new rise inside me. Not anger. Clarity. 2 days later, I went back to the house, not to move in, but to pick up documents. The moment I walked in, the room went quiet. My daughter-in-law crossed her arms. I thought we agreed you'd stay away, she said. I'm here for my papers, I replied calmly. My son avoided my eyes. As I walked toward the drawer in the living room, my daughter-in-law stepped in front of me. What papers? She asked sharply. I looked at her. And for the first time, I did not lower my voice. The ones that prove I was never as helpless as you thought. Her face changed. My son looked up suddenly. What do you mean by that, Mom? He asked. I opened the drawer. My hand touched the folder. And before I could pull it out, my daughter-in-law grabbed my wrist. Hard. You're not taking anything, she said. The room froze. My heart raced. Because in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. They had no idea what they were about to lose. Her fingers were tight around my wrist. Not caring. Not gentle. Just firm enough to remind me of my place. I looked down at her hand, then slowly lifted my eyes to her face. Let go of me, I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised even me. For a moment, no one moved. My son stood there, frozen, his mouth slightly open, like he wanted to speak but didn't know which side to choose. Finally, she released my wrist and stepped back. I just don't want trouble, she said quickly. Trouble. As if I had always been the problem. I pulled the folder from the drawer and held it against my chest. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. I raised you better than this, I said, looking at my son. I didn't raise you to watch someone grab your mother. He swallowed hard. Mom, please, he said. Let's just talk. We sat down. The three of us. Same living room. Same couch. Different power. I didn't open the folder right away. Instead, I spoke. You both think this house is the only thing I have left, I said slowly. You think when my health failed, everything else failed too. Neither of them answered. So let me tell you something you never asked, I continued. While I was busy holding this family together, I was also protecting myself. My daughter-in-law laughed nervously. Protecting yourself how? She asked. I opened the folder just enough for them to see the first page. Her laughter stopped. My son leaned forward. What is that? He asked. Those, I said, are documents you never cared to look for. Years ago, after watching too many women lose everything when their husbands died, I made a decision. I quietly invested. Small amounts at first. Money saved from skipping meals. Money from side work I never talked about. I bought a small piece of land. Then another. Nothing flashy. Nothing loud. Just safe. And when my husband passed, I didn't sell those investments. I let them grow. While they assumed I had nothing. My daughter-in-law's voice softened. Why didn't you tell us? She asked. I smiled sadly. You never asked. The room went quiet again. Then my son spoke. Mom, if you have all this, why are you asking us for help? That question hurt more than anything else he had said. I wasn't asking for money, I replied. I was asking for care, respect, time. He looked down. He couldn't meet my eyes. That night, they asked me to stay. Not because they felt bad. Because they were afraid. But I agreed. For now. Because I needed to see how deep their fear went. Over the next few days, things changed. My daughter-in-law suddenly started cooking for me. My son asked how I slept. They spoke softly around me. Too softly. Like people walking on broken glass. But kindness born from fear doesn't feel like love. It feels like strategy. One evening, I overheard them whispering again. She could sell everything, my daughter-in-law said. If she does, we lose the house, my son replied. Lose the house. Not lose me. That was when I knew something important. They were not sorry for what they did. They were sorry they got caught underestimating me. That night, I took the folder back to my room and locked the door. Inside the folder was something else. Something they had never seen. A letter. Written years ago. A letter explaining what would happen if I was ever pushed aside. I had written it after watching another woman from church get thrown out by her own children. I never thought I would need it. But here I was. The next morning, my health got worse. My chest felt tight. My vision blurred. I sat on the bed, breathing slowly, telling myself not to panic. Then I heard arguing outside my door. "She's faking it," my daughter-in-law said. "She just wants control." That sentence broke something in me. After everything. I opened the door. Both of them jumped. "I heard you," I said quietly. They froze. "I heard what you said about me." My son tried to explain. "Mom, she didn't mean." "I did," she interrupted. "This is stressful for us too." Us. Not me. Not my health. Not my life. I nodded slowly. "That's all I needed to hear," I said. I went back into my room and locked the door. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. I opened my messages and typed one sentence. "It's time." Almost instantly, a reply came back. "Then don't hesitate." My heart raced, because I knew what came next would change everything. That afternoon, a stranger knocked on the door. A man in a neat suit. He introduced himself politely. "I'm here to speak with Elizabeth." My daughter-in-law's face went pale. My son looked confused. I stepped forward. "That's me," I said. The man smiled and held out his hand. "Ma'am," he said, "it's time we reviewed what belongs to you." The room went silent. Because in that moment, they finally understood something terrifying. I was no longer just their mother. I was a problem they could not control. The moment the man in the suit stepped fully into the living room, the air changed. Not a single person spoke. My daughter-in-law's face looked tight, like she was trying to hold something back. My son kept glancing at me, then at the man, then back at me again, as if he was hoping I would explain everything and make the tension disappear. But I said nothing. For once, I let silence do the work. The man cleared his throat gently. "Ma'am, may we sit?" I nodded. We sat at the dining table. The same table where I had served meals for years. The same table where birthdays were celebrated and arguments were settled. But today, the roles were different. The man opened his briefcase and placed a thin stack of documents on the table. "These are the records you asked me to bring," he said calmly. My daughter-in-law leaned forward. "Records of what?" The man looked at me, waiting. I met his eyes. "Go on," I said. He nodded. "These documents show ownership and control of several assets acquired over the years. All of them belong to Elizabeth." My son's chair scraped loudly against the floor as he shifted. "Assets?" he asked. "What assets?" I took a slow breath. "The ones I built quietly while everyone was too busy assuming I had nothing." The man began explaining, one paper at a time. Small properties. Long-term investments. Savings accounts untouched for years. Nothing illegal. Nothing sudden. Just patience. With every word, my daughter-in-law's face drained of color. "But the house," she said. "This house." I looked at her. "This house was paid for with my money," I said. "And it is still under my name." My son's voice cracked. "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" I looked at him for a long time. "Because you stopped asking," I said. That truth landed heavy. The man continued. "There is also a document," he said, pulling out a single page, "that outlines what happens if Elizabeth's well-being is compromised or if she is forced out of her residence." My daughter-in-law's hands started shaking. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," I replied, "I planned for the day I would be treated like I didn't matter." I reached for the page and read from it slowly. "If I am ever denied care, respect, or residence in my own home, all shared access will be revoked." The room felt smaller. Tighter. My son rubbed his face with both hands. Mom, we were just stressed, he said. We didn't mean it. I leaned forward. You meant it enough to pack my things, I said. You meant it enough to watch me leave. Silence. After the man left, the house stayed quiet. Too quiet. My daughter-in-law tried to speak, but the words came out wrong. We can fix this, she said. We can start over. I stood up. No, I said. You don't fix something by pretending it never broke. That night, they were extra careful around me. Too careful. Doors opened quietly. Voices lowered. Questions asked gently. But something had shifted. They were no longer in charge. Later that evening, my son knocked on my door. Mom, he said softly. I'm sorry. I opened the door just enough to look at him. Sorry for what? I asked. He hesitated. For letting it go that far. I nodded. That's a start. But it wasn't enough. Because apologies don't erase fear. And I was still afraid. Not of losing my home. But of losing myself again. That night, I sat alone and thought about the future. I thought about what it meant to be strong. I thought about how easily love turns into control when people feel entitled. And I made another decision. One they wouldn't see coming. The next morning, I made a call. A short call. A necessary one. When I ended it, I felt calm. Almost peaceful. That afternoon, my daughter-in-law approached me with a forced smile. We were thinking, she said, maybe we could all sit down and talk about the will. The will. I looked at her. And that was when I understood something very clearly. They weren't afraid of losing me. They were afraid of losing what I owned. I smiled slowly. We will talk, I said. But not today. Her face tightened. And in that moment I knew. The real battle hadn't even started yet. After that day, the house felt different. Too quiet. Too careful. Everyone was suddenly polite. My daughter-in-law greeted me every morning with a smile that did not reach her eyes. She asked if I had slept well. She asked what I wanted to eat. She even called me mom again, a word she had not used in a long time. My son started coming home earlier. He offered to help me walk. He asked about my pain. But something about it all felt wrong. It felt rehearsed. Like a play where everyone knew their lines but forgot the meaning. I had lived long enough to know the difference between love and fear. This was fear. One evening, as we sat at the table eating dinner, my daughter-in-law cleared her throat. We've been thinking about the future, she said carefully. I kept eating. The future. That word again. And we realized, she continued, that we should probably plan things better, as a family. I looked up slowly. What kind of planning? I asked. She glanced at my son. Well, my son said, forcing a smile. Just making sure everything is clear. So there are no problems later. Problems. Later. I placed my spoon down. Clear for who? I asked. They both went silent. Then my daughter-in-law spoke again, softer this time. You're not getting any younger, she said. We just want to make sure your wishes are respected. My wishes. The same wishes they ignored when I said I needed help. I leaned back in my chair. My wish, I said calmly, was to be treated like your mother. Not like a burden. My son's face flushed. That's not fair, he said quickly. We never meant. You meant enough, I replied, to push me out. No one spoke after that. Dinner ended early. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the word planning echo in my mind. I had seen this before. Not in my own life, but in others. Old women suddenly surrounded by kindness. Suddenly important. Suddenly loved. Only because someone wanted something. I sat up in bed and reached for the folder again. Inside were documents, yes. but also memories. Sacrifice after sacrifice. And in the middle of it all, one page stood out. A page I had not shown anyone. A clause. Simple words. Clear meaning. It stated that no decision about my assets could be made under pressure, fear, or manipulation. And if such pressure was proven, everything would change. I closed the folder. They had no idea how close they were to crossing a line. The next day, my daughter-in-law invited her sister over. She said it casually, like it meant nothing. "She's just visiting," she said. But when her sister arrived, she didn't sit in the living room. She sat next to me. Very close. She smiled too much. "You look good," she said. "Strong." I nodded. Then she said, "Family is important. Especially when someone gets older." There it was. I excused myself and went to my room. Behind the closed door, my heart beat fast, not from fear, but from anger. They were circling. Slowly. Carefully. That evening, my son came into my room alone. He closed the door behind him. "Mom," he said quietly, "can I ask you something?" I nodded. "If something happens to you," he said slowly, "what happens to everything?" I looked at him. Really looked at him. This was my child. The boy I raised. And yet, in that moment, I did not recognize him. "You're asking the wrong question," I said. He frowned. "What do you mean?" "You should be asking how I'm doing," I replied. "Not what happens when I'm gone." His eyes dropped. "I'm just trying to be responsible," he said. I took a deep breath. "Responsibility," I said, "starts with kindness, not paperwork." He left without another word. That night, I made another call. Not to the man in the suit. To someone else. Someone I trusted completely. When I hung up, my hands were steady. My mind was clear. Because now, I was no longer reacting. I was preparing. The next morning, I overheard my daughter-in-law on the phone. "She's still sharp," she whispered. "No, she hasn't signed anything." "Yes, we need to move carefully." My chest tightened. Not from pain. From betrayal. I stepped back quietly before she noticed me. And in that moment, I made a promise to myself. I would never beg for love again. If they wanted control, they were about to learn what losing control really felt like. That afternoon, a letter arrived. Official. Stamped. Important. My daughter-in-law picked it up first. Her hands shook as she read the first line. Then she looked at me. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely steady. I met her eyes. "That," I said calmly, "is the beginning of the end of your plans." Her face went pale. My son stepped closer. "Mom, what did you do?" he asked. I smiled. Not with joy, but with certainty. Something I should have done a long time ago. The letter lay open on the table. No one touched it. No one spoke. My daughter-in-law stood frozen, staring at the words like they might disappear if she looked long enough. My son hovered beside her, reading the page over and over again, as if trying to find a sentence that would make him feel safe. "What does this mean?" he finally asked. His voice was small. Careful. The letter was simple. Clear. Cold. It stated that an independent review of my living situation and personal welfare had been requested. It explained that my assets and residence were now under temporary protection until the review was complete. In simple words, no one could touch anything. Not the house. Not the accounts. Not the future. My daughter-in-law's voice cracked. "Why would you do this to us?" "To us?" I looked at her calmly. "I didn't do anything to you," I said. "I did something for myself." She shook her head in disbelief. "We're family," she said. "You didn't have to take it this far." I leaned forward. "You took it far the day you packed my bag," I replied. That afternoon, the house turned cold. Not with temperature. with truth. My daughter-in-law stopped pretending. My son stopped smiling. The kindness vanished. In its place came frustration. Whispers. Sharp looks. Doors closing harder than before. By evening, my daughter-in-law exploded. "You planned this," she shouted. "You waited for us to make a mistake." I stood still. "I waited for you to show me who you really were," I said. She laughed bitterly. "So now you're punishing us?" "No," I replied. "I'm protecting myself." My son finally spoke up. "Mom, please," he said. "This is tearing the family apart." I looked at him sadly. "No," I said. "This is showing what was already broken." That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was afraid. Because I was remembering. I remembered every moment I stayed quiet to keep peace. Every time I swallowed my pain to protect others. Every time I told myself, this is just how families are. I realized something painful. They had mistaken my silence for weakness. The next day, someone came to the house. A woman this time. Kind eyes. Calm voice. She introduced herself politely and asked to speak with me alone. We sat in the living room. She asked simple questions. How do you feel here? Do you feel safe? Do you feel respected? I answered honestly. My daughter-in-law paced the kitchen, listening. My son sat with his head down. When the woman left, the house felt smaller than ever. That evening, my son knocked on my door again. He looked tired. "Mom," he said, "I didn't know it had gotten this bad." I studied his face. "Did you ever ask?" I replied. He had no answer. "I was scared," he admitted. "Scared of choosing sides." I nodded. "And in doing nothing," I said softly, "you chose one." Tears filled his eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I believed his pain. But pain does not erase consequences. Later that night, my daughter-in-law confronted me again. "You're destroying this family," she said. I looked at her. "No," I said quietly. "I stopped letting it destroy me." She turned away in anger. But as she walked off, I noticed something new. Fear. Real fear. Because now she knew. She was no longer in control. 2 days later, my health suddenly worsened. Sharp pain in my chest. Dizziness. Weakness. I sat down slowly, breathing through it. My son rushed to my side. "Mom," he cried. "We need to get you help." My daughter-in-law stood in the doorway, watching, not moving. That was when I understood something terrifying. If I had stayed silent, if I had stayed weak, no one would have saved me. An ambulance was called. As they helped me onto the stretcher, I looked back at the house. The home I once held together. The home that almost broke me. My daughter-in-law's face was pale. My son was crying. As the doors closed, my phone vibrated. A message. Just 2 words. "Stay strong." I closed my eyes. Because I knew one thing for sure now. Whatever happened next, there was no going back. The ambulance siren faded into the distance as the doors slammed shut. Inside, everything moved fast. Lights above me. Voices I didn't recognize. Questions asked quickly. "Can you tell me your name? Are you feeling pain? Do you have any medical history?" "My name is Elizabeth," I said softly. "And yes, I'm in pain." My chest felt tight, like something heavy was sitting on it. Every breath took effort. I tried not to panic, but fear crept in anyway. Not fear of dying. Fear of dying alone. At the hospital, they placed me in a quiet room. Machines beeped softly beside me. A nurse tucked a blanket around my shoulders and smiled gently. "You're safe here," she said. Those words almost made me cry. Safe. I hadn't felt that word in a long time. They ran tests. They asked more questions. They told me to rest. As I lay there staring at the ceiling, my mind drifted. I thought about my life. About the woman I used to be. Strong. Reliable. Invisible. I had spent so long taking care of everyone else that I forgot what it felt like to be taken care of. A doctor came in later and sat beside my bed. "You've been under a lot of stress," he said. "Your body is reacting to years of pressure." Years. Not days. Not weeks. Years. "You need rest," he continued. "And you need support." I nodded slowly. Support. That word sounded strange. Who was supposed to support me now? A knock came at the door. I turned my head. It was my son. His eyes were red. His face looked tired. "Mom," he said quietly. "I'm so sorry. I didn't speak right away." He sat down carefully. "I should have protected you," he said. "You protected me my whole life." His voice broke. "I failed you." Tears rolled down his cheeks. I reached for his hand. "You did fail me," I said gently. "But you're here now." He nodded. "I won't leave," he said. I wanted to believe him. A few minutes later, another figure appeared at the door. My daughter-in-law. She hesitated before stepping inside. She didn't come close. She stood near the wall. "I didn't know it would get this bad," she said quietly. I looked at her. "You knew I was sick," I replied. "You just didn't care." She looked away. "I was scared," she said. "Scared of losing everything." There it was. The truth. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing things. That night, I slept for the first time in days. Deep sleep. Heavy sleep. When I woke up, sunlight filled the room. And with it came clarity. I realized something important. Love that depends on what you own is not love. Later that day, the woman who visited my home came to see me. She sat beside my bed and spoke softly. "We've reviewed the situation," she said. "Your home environment was not healthy for you." I nodded. "I know. For now," she continued, "we recommend a change in living arrangements." A change. My son looked alarmed. "What do you mean?" he asked. "It means," she replied calmly, "Elizabeth needs peace to recover." Peace. I smiled faintly. That was something I had not had in a very long time. After she left, my son turned to me. "You can come back home," he said quickly. "I'll make sure everything is different." I studied his face. "I believe you want to try," I said. "But wanting is not enough." He swallowed hard. "Then what do you want?" he asked. I took a slow breath. "I want space," I said. "And time." His shoulders dropped. "I understand," he said quietly. My daughter-in-law said nothing. That evening as I rested, my phone buzzed again. A message from the same unknown number. "You are doing the right thing. Don't let guilt pull you back." I closed my eyes. Because guilt had ruled my life for too long. The next morning, a nurse handed me a folder. "Someone dropped this off for you," she said. Inside were papers. New papers. Important ones. I flipped through them slowly. And when I reached the last page, my heart skipped. It was a plan. A full plan. For my life after this. I looked up. "Who brought this?" I asked. The nurse smiled. "A woman," she said. "She said you'd understand." I did. And that was when I realized. I wasn't alone anymore. But the biggest decision of my life was still ahead of me. I held the folder in my hands for a long time. I didn't open it again right away. My fingers rested on the edges of the papers, and I could feel my heart beating steadily now. Not fast, not scared. Just steady. For the first time in years, my body felt like it was finally being heard. When I did open the folder again, I read every page slowly. There were plans written in simple words. Options laid out clearly. No pressure. No demands. A small, quiet place to live. Medical support nearby. Independence. But not loneliness. It wasn't a prison. It was freedom. And that made my chest tighten in a way I didn't expect. Because I realized something painful. I had never allowed myself to imagine a life that did not revolve around fixing someone else's problems. My son sat across the room, watching me. He didn't interrupt. He didn't rush me. That alone told me how much things had changed. "What are you thinking, Mom?" he finally asked. I looked up. "I'm thinking about how much of my life I spent surviving," I said. "And how little time I spent living." He nodded slowly. "I never knew you felt that way." "That's because," I replied gently, "I never said it out loud." Later that afternoon, my daughter-in-law returned. She stood at the door, unsure if she should come in. "You can sit," I said. She sat. Not close. But not far either. "I was wrong," she said suddenly. I looked at her. Not angry. Not soft. Just honest. "I treated you like a problem," she continued, "instead of a person." I waited. "I thought you were in the way," she admitted. "I thought once everything was settled, life would be easier." "And now?" I asked. She swallowed. "Now I see that we were breaking you." That was the closest thing to truth she had ever given me. That evening, the doctor came back with test results. "You're stable," he said. "But stress like this can come back if nothing changes." I nodded. "Something will change," I said. I meant it. The next day, I was discharged from the hospital. But I did not go home. Instead, a car waited outside. Quiet. Clean. Calm. My son stood beside me. "Are you sure?" he asked. I smiled sadly. "I've never been more sure of anything." He hugged me tightly. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too," I said. "That's why I'm choosing myself this time." My daughter-in-law stood a few steps away. She looked like she wanted to speak. Then she said, "I hope you'll forgive me someday." I met her eyes. "Forgiveness," I said, "comes after change. Not before." She nodded. The drive was peaceful. Trees passed by. Sunlight filled the car. When we arrived, the place was small but warm. Quiet halls. Soft voices. No tension in the air. A woman greeted me with a smile. "Welcome, Elizabeth," she said. "We've been expecting you." Expecting me. Not my money. Not my property. Me. That night, I sat alone in my new room. No noise. No arguing. No fear. Just silence. I stood by the window and looked out. And for the first time in many years, I cried. Not from pain. From relief. But peace has a way of bringing memories back. As the days passed, I began to remember things I had buried. Moments when my son was small and held my hand. Moments when my family laughed together. Moments before everything turned into responsibility. And with those memories came doubt. Was I abandoning them? Was I being selfish? One night, I picked up my phone and almost called my son. Almost. But then another thought came to me. If choosing myself feels wrong, maybe that's because I was taught to disappear. I put the phone down. A week later, my son visited. Alone. He looked different. Calmer. "I see it now," he said after sitting with me for a while. "How much pressure you were under." I nodded. "I don't want to lose you," he said. "You won't," I replied. "But our relationship must change." He nodded again. "I'm learning," he said. Slowly. That night, as I prepared for bed, my phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. "Peace suits you. But be careful. Peace often makes others desperate." My heart skipped. Because deep down, I knew it was true. I had stepped away. But the consequences of that choice were still unfolding. And something told me. The calm would not last forever. The quiet became my new normal. Morning sunlight through the window. Soft footsteps in the hallway. Meals served without shouting or tension. For the first time in years, my body began to heal the way my heart never had the chance to. My hands stopped shaking. My sleep came easier. The tight knot in my chest slowly loosened. And yet, deep inside I felt it. That calm never comes without a cost. 2 weeks into my new life, my son started calling more often. At first, the calls were gentle. How are you feeling today? Did you eat well? Are they treating you right? I answered honestly. Yes. I'm resting. I'm okay. Then the questions changed. Do you miss the house? Do you think you'll come back soon? Wouldn't it be easier if we were all together again? I felt the shift. Peace had made them nervous. One afternoon, my daughter-in-law called. Her voice sounded sweet. Too sweet. We've been talking, she said. And we think it's time to make things official. Official how? I asked. Well, now that you're settled, we should finish the paperwork. Paperwork. I closed my eyes. What paperwork? I asked calmly. She hesitated. The will, she said. The house. Everything. There it was. Not me. Not my health. Everything. I'm not discussing that right now, I replied. Her tone changed instantly. We're just trying to help, she said sharply. I didn't ask for help, I replied. The line went silent. Then she hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of fear. Because of anger. I realized something I didn't want to admit before. They were not waiting for me to recover. They were waiting for me to weaken again. 2 days later, I received an unexpected visit. A man in a suit. Different from the first one. He introduced himself politely and asked to speak with me privately. He sat across from me and placed a document on the table. I've been contacted regarding your estate, he said. My heart dropped. By whom? I asked. He hesitated. Your family. That word felt heavy. I did not request this, I said. I understand, he replied. But they are concerned about your long-term decisions. Concerned. I smiled faintly. They were concerned when I stopped being convenient, I said. The man nodded slowly. I'm required to inform you, he continued, that there has been an attempt to challenge your capacity. The room went quiet. Challenge my capacity? I repeated. Yes, he said gently. They believe you may not be in the right state of mind to make decisions alone. My hands clenched. After everything, they were trying to take my voice. I asked him to leave. After he did, I sat alone for a long time. This was it. The line they had crossed. They were no longer just afraid. They were desperate. I called my son. He answered quickly. What is this? I asked him directly. Why are you questioning my ability to think? He was silent. Then he said quietly, we just want to make sure you're protected. Protected from what? I asked. From choosing myself? He sighed. This place is temporary, he said. You belong with family. That sentence made everything clear. To them, I didn't belong to myself. That night, the unknown number messaged again. This is the move we expected. Now you must decide how far you're willing to go. My heart raced. Because I knew what that meant. If I stayed quiet now, I would lose everything. Not my assets. My freedom. The next morning, I made a decision. I called the woman who helped me leave the house. I need your help, I said. She didn't hesitate. Then we move fast, she replied. By afternoon, documents were prepared. Appointments scheduled. Safeguards activated. I felt calm. Not scared. Prepared. That evening, My son showed up unannounced. He looked angry, confused, desperate. "You're tearing this family apart," he shouted. I stood slowly. "No," I said firmly. "I'm refusing to be torn apart anymore." He stared at me. "This isn't you," he said. I stepped closer. "This is the part of me you ignored," I replied. He had no answer. As he turned to leave, he stopped. "You're going to regret this," he said. I met his eyes. "So are you," I said quietly. The door closed behind him. And with that sound I knew. The night after my son left, I did not cry. That surprised me. For years, tears came easily. Tears of guilt. Tears of fear. Tears of feeling like I was never enough, no matter how much I gave. But that night, there were no tears. Only calm. A calm that told me something important had ended. The next morning, I woke up early. The sun was just rising, and the world outside my window looked quiet and honest. I sat on the edge of my bed and placed my feet on the floor, feeling steady, strong. For the first time in a long time, my strength did not come from sacrifice. It came from choice. Later that day, the woman who had helped me before came to see me again. She sat across from me with a folder, thicker than the last one. "These are the final steps," she said. "Once you sign, no one can question your voice again." I opened the folder slowly. Inside were clear protections. My decisions could not be challenged without proof. My living arrangements were secured. My assets were locked under my control alone. No pressure. No manipulation. No fear. I picked up the pen. Before signing, I paused. Not because I was unsure. Because I was remembering. I remembered every meal I skipped. Every dream I delayed. Every time I said, "I'm fine," when I wasn't. Then I signed my name. And just like that, it was done. 2 days later, my son called again. His voice was softer this time. Defeated. "Mom, can we talk?" "We are talking," I replied calmly. There was a long silence. "I didn't know how to let you go," he said finally. "I thought if you stayed close, everything would stay the same." I closed my eyes. "That's the problem," I said. "Everything stayed the same while I was breaking." "I was scared," he whispered. "So was I replied. "But only one of us paid the price." He didn't argue. "I don't know how to fix this," he said. "You don't fix it," I answered. "You respect it." Later that week, my daughter-in-law sent a message. It was short. "I understand now. I'm sorry." I read it once. Then I put my phone down. Sorry was a beginning, not an ending. Days turned into weeks. My health improved. I started walking again. I started laughing again. I started sleeping without fear. I made friends. People who knew nothing about my money. Nothing about my past. Nothing about what I owned. They only knew me. Elizabeth. The woman who had lived too long for others, and finally chose herself. One afternoon, as I sat in the garden, my son visited again. This time, he didn't ask for anything. He just sat with me. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. I looked at him. "I hope one day," I said, "you'll understand that love is not about control. It's about care." He nodded. "I'm learning," he said. That was enough. As the sun set, I realized something that changed how I saw my whole life. I was never abandoned. I was just finally brave enough to walk away from what was hurting me. And in doing so, I saved myself. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss stories that speak the truth many are afraid to tell. Also, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And have you ever given everything to family, only to be forgotten when you needed help? Your story matters. And sometimes, choosing yourself is not selfish. It's survival.